If you wanted to obliterate someone's reputation in the late 2000s or early 2010s, you submitted them to thedirty.com. And in turn, that website gave us some of the most egregious libel ever, while also revealing harsh truths about public figures like Hulk Hogan, Ashton Kutcher, and even our president. Today I want to talk about thedirty.com in its full, wild, uncensored glory. We're getting into its humble beginnings, some of the biggest, craziest stories that broke on the site, and how Nick Richie and The Dirty low-key shaped the way social media exists today. So buckle up, grab a snack, light up if you want to. Shit, we're going there. In the 2000s, the internet was still kind of like the Wild West. We had websites like Sticky Drama and PerezHilton.com giving us the latest hot gossip in the most problematic, cattiest tones ever. But Hooman Karamian, a credit card processor in Scottsdale, took it to a whole new level. In 2007, while he partied in Scottsdale's nightclubs and bars, a new era of TV was becoming more and more popular. Reality. Real Housewives of Orange County was fresh, and it documented the lives of women in the exclusive Coto de Caza community that Hooman grew up in. So he thought to himself, reality TV is poppin', what about reality internet? The people who made Scottsdale nightlife were interesting enough to document, so he launched DirtyScottsdale.com, a gossip rag of sorts that chronicled the club scene and its patrons. On Dirty Scottsdale, he anonymously wrote about Gorilla Girl, a nightclub regular who apparently had a lot of hair extensions. There was also Krusty, a woman who, in his opinion, wore a little bit too much makeup. And on top of that, he took submissions. People could snap photos on their Razors and Blackberries, send him an email, and he'd post it without really fact-checking anything. So for example, I see this bitch I don't like in the club, and I secretly take a photo of her. I then write in saying that she slept with my boyfriend, he posts it, and then my friends and I snicker away in the comment section. Dirty Scottsdale brought about what Hooman referred to as civilian paparazzi. No one was safe, and the whole thing was a huge hit. In this era of relentless shit talk and the beginning of niche micro-celebrities, his fellow Arizonians ate that shit up. People wanted Dirty Newport, Dirty Chicago, Dirty Houston. After creating a series of Dirty City and college sites with similar success, he ended up extending the site to include over 300 cities under a single domain. thedirty.com. It was so huge that Hooman couldn't work on it alone. He had contributors like Brock Landers, a writer who was later confirmed to be former Arizona Congressman and Tea Party member Ben Quayle. Now at first, Hooman didn't want to jeopardize his career or legal standing by revealing that he was the person behind the site. He posted under a pseudonym, Nick Richie, as in the counterpart to Perez Hilton. But the public loved him. He'd add a snarky sentence or two at the bottom of all the submissions, usually something extremely insulting, and he coined a bunch of phrases that made their way into the cultural lexicon. When someone submitted a girl who took a lot of mysterious trips to Dubai to yacht it up with her girlfriends, he'd add a comment calling them a porta potty, as in human toilet. Another story for another day. If someone submitted a photo of a girl with a bad boob job, he'd comment on her refund gap, as in when your fake boobs are so far apart, there's a huge gap in the middle. There was really a term for everything. I mean, the man popularized the term thigh gap. It started out as ITG, inner thigh gap, but yeah, that was him. Of course, here in 2025, if you shame someone or comment negatively about their body, it's generally considered a faux pas, but back in the day, it was fine. It was so fine that the site's anonymous founder decided to remove the Nick Richie veil and reveal who he truly was. Well, it wasn't exactly his decision. It was kind of forced. This is linked in the references if you want to listen to the full episode, but on the Skinny Confidential, Nick told a pretty sordid tale. One day, Nick received and published a submission about the daughter of a local police chief. Naked. Now, The Dirty didn't publish nudity, I'm assuming to not limit their site to 18+, but he did post semi-censored versions of the photos. Next thing you know, Nick's out drinking on a Tuesday night and gets stopped on his way home. He's arrested for what the police report refers to as an extreme DUI, as in a blood alcohol level over 0.15. So he was double the legal limit. Nick claims on the podcast that this was all a huge trap because he went after the local police chief's daughter, but the police report does say that he was going 62 in a 35 construction zone, so we don't know, do we? Drunk driving is obviously terrible, and it's something that Nick talked a lot about on The Dirty in his Drunk Driver Hall of Shame. He would post people's mugshots and DUI results, allowing his audience to comment on their moral failing. Nick was ordered to pay around $2,000 in fines, and he was sentenced to 4 days in jail at Tent City, an infamous offshoot of the Maricopa County Jail. This is the place where inmates were required to wear pink underwear and lived outside in the Arizona desert. It's no longer around, but it was definitely one of the worst, most dehumanizing places to be locked up. That being said, if there's one thing that NIK Richie is really good at, it's turning lemons into lemonade. According to Nick, a lot of the inmates had actually heard of him in the dirty.com, so he found his way into a little set who protected him and cared for him while he was there. On top of the stint in jail, Nick's mugshot was making the rounds worldwide, and competitor gossip sites were gloating at his ironic misfortune. Here you had this guy who made a living shaming people for their life decisions, getting arrested for arguably one of the most shameful crimes people can commit. Nick was convinced that his hypocrisy would end his internet troll career forever, but instead the opposite happened. He posted his own mugshot, leaned into the controversy, and his site visitors ate it up. Nick even crossed paths with Sheriff Joe Arpaio, the creator of Tent City, and they had a little kiki.
Yeah, no, silence. Yeah. What is that? Is anyone taking a picture? Yeah. Got it? What does this mean? You know what this means?
I love that he didn't know what this is. Classic. The dirty was growing to new heights. Women were outing other women for all sorts of debauchery and even submitting photos of themselves for feedback on their appearance. But what cinches the waist for me is that despite a lot of the stuff on that site just being vengeful gossip, some of it actually checked out. In 2011, Nick received a submission alleging that then reality star Donald Trump had hooked up with an adult actress at a golf event. And the actress? Stormy Daniels. The tea kind of started making the rounds in grocery store tabloids, but a combination of threats against allegation peddlers and straight up denial quickly snuffed out the story. But Nick stood on business. Even after receiving a cease and desist from Stormy's attorney, the post stayed up, although no other publication would touch the story. Of course, Stormy Daniels didn't really speak out about this for years, but it all started with an anonymous submission to thedirty.com. In September of the same year, another submission talked about a woman who hooked up with Ashton Kutcher at the Hard Rock San Diego while he was still married to Demi Moore. The post was submitted by someone who claimed to be friends with Sarah Leal. According to the post, Sarah met Ashton at the Hard Rock and they hooked up in his room on the 12th floor after his security guard confiscated her phone. The source claimed that Ashton told Sarah that he and Demi were already separated. And Nick commented on the post saying that he got concrete proof. Ashton tweeted something vague about what happens when you make assumptions, but the damage was already done. Weeks later, Sarah Leal went to Us Weekly and sang like Luther. A couple of interesting side notes, apparently there was no condom and the whole thing went down on the wedding anniversary night of Ashton and Demi. If I had pearls right now, I'd be clutching. A month later, Demi announced that she was filing for divorce, obviously. This whole situation was just really random and nuts. And speaking of nuts, we should also talk about Anthony Weiner. This story is too much. So let me set the scene, because at the time I was way too young to follow this, and maybe you were too. If you don't know who Anthony Weiner is, he was a US representative from New York in the 2000s. He was a Democrat, very supportive of the LGBT community, very pro-choice, sponsored a bill to bring more international fashion models to New York City. Overall, a pretty likable guy, despite some really crazy foreign policy beliefs, but those have nothing to do with Anthony Weiner's wiener, which is what we're here to talk about today. Behind the scenes, this stand-up guy was throwing office furniture at his employees, not paying traffic tickets, and cheating on his wife, like a lot. In 2011, he was caught sending his nudes to a Twitter follower and then admitted to sexting multiple women. He then resigned from Congress and laid low for a couple of years before re-emerging to run for mayor of New York in 2013. But unfortunately for his election, this is where NIK Richie and thedirty.com come in. A woman named Sydney Leathers submitted a fresh Anthony Weiner dick pic to the site, and of course, Nick published it. Apparently, she'd been sexting the guy for months, and once again, she was not the only one. Much like Nick, Anthony had come up with a pseudonym to keep his sexting under wraps: Carlos Danger. This submission was like gasoline on a flame. The story blew up internationally, seemingly costing Anthony Weiner his election. He and his wife said that they were gonna let bygones be bygones and just move forward. And by moving forward, I'm talking about towards divorce and federal prison. In 2017, Anthony Weiner pled guilty to sexting a minor and headed straight to the clink. He has since been released and is now running for New York City Council, so there's that. Nick found himself at the center of so many controversies over the years, and he speaks about them with pride. He's proud that he broke the Stormy Daniels story, and he's proud that Trump's campaign team paid him years later to endorse his presidential run. He's proud that Ashton Kutcher got caught up with Sarah Leal, and he's proud that he didn't pay her $200,000 that she was demanding for an exclusive. He's proud that he was the first to expose Anthony Weiner's second round of indiscretions and take him down. But more than anything, if I had to guess, I would say that he's the proudest of everything that happened with with Hulk Hogan and Gawker. Former professional wrestler and reality TV dad Hulk Hogan was caught with his pants down in 2012. TMZ and The Dirty both received an explicit tape of Hulk Hogan getting it on with his best friend's wife. The footage was clearly from a security camera, and Hulk said that he had no idea that he was being recorded. When Nick shared screenshots of the video on The Dirty, Hulk's lawyers came at him very quickly. But despite Nick being one of the first people to publicize the tape, he wasn't the one who took the fall. Another digital gossip rag, Gawker, ended up posting a snippet of the tape 6 months later, and they caught the lawsuit from Hulk Hogan, much to Nick's excitement. According to Kate Nibbs from The Ringer, there was some sort of conspiracy against Gawker going on behind the scenes. They'd come for powerful people like Peter Thiel, as well as internet micro-celebrities, so to speak, like Nick and his friend Joe Francis. As in Girls Gone Wild. As in currently hiding in Mexico, as it needs to be extradited to the US expeditiously. So, with Joe's advice, Nick scrubbed The Dirty of any trace of the Hulk Hogan screenshots and happily let Gawker take the fall. And fall they did. They were ordered to pay Hulk Hogan $115 million. It bankrupted them. Meanwhile, Nick continued to laugh his way to the bank. Another competitor had bitten the dust. Nick broke these true stories of cheating scandals, payoffs, and deviance, but if you haven't put 2 and 2 together yet, he didn't exactly, how do I put this, move by the book. In fact, The Dirty's anonymous submission system allowed him to get away with exposing innocent people. I think the best example of this is sportscaster Erin Andrews. Back in 2009, Nick received a submission that featured nude photos and videos of Erin. Not entirely unheard of on the site, but this time the circumstances were different. These photos and videos of Erin had come from a camera that a fan had secretly hidden in her hotel room. So as she got ready for the day, she was unknowingly being recorded. Honestly, I feel like I can speak for a lot of us, this is one of my worst nightmares. I can't imagine waking up one day and finding out that not only were you secretly recorded, but now these photos and videos are going viral online. The deranged fan was eventually arrested and sentenced to 30 months in jail, with most news publications taking down the content from their sites. But not Nick Richie. When Erin's lawyers sent him a cease and desist and threatened copyright infringement, he didn't give a single fuck. Instead of removing the post, Nick responded to the letter by sharing 22 additional screenshots with the caption, "Erin Andrews, can you ask your lawyers if this is the post they want me to take down because I am confused. Welcome back to reality. Your fault." How the actual fuck this was her fault? I have no idea. But Erin's story was not unusual for The Dirty. Tens of millions of people were reading this site, and if you were posted on there, you were completely screwed. Because of the site's massive popularity, if you were posted on there and someone Googled your name, The Dirty would show up at the top of the search results. In just a few years, Nick had gone from making 5 figures in his cubicle to moderating one of the most popular internet gossip sites. But it wasn't all glamour and exposés. Obviously, Nick made a lot of enemies. The thing is, he had no legal responsibility to remove posts about anyone from his website, even if the content of the submission was obtained illegally. It didn't matter that Nick shared screenshots of a video that Hulk Hogan didn't know was being recorded. It didn't matter that Nick posted what essentially were peephole photos of Erin Andrews. Everything on the site was submitted by others anonymously, so as far as the law was concerned, Nick's hands were clean. It's the same reason why Hunter Moore's IsAnyoneUp.com was allowed to post literal revenge porn on the internet for anyone to see. And that is a whole story all on its own. Girl, if you think the things Nick Richie did were disgusting, it gets so much worse. The point is that you can't hold a website liable for the things that the people who use that website post on it. It's the reason why if someone's shit-talking me on Facebook, I can't sue Meta into taking it down. They may feel a moral obligation to take down posts, and they may take down posts that are reported, but it's not their legal responsibility. Anytime someone tried to sue Nick Richie for thedirty.com, he pulled the Communications Decency Act, got out of it, and made them pay his legal fees. The CDA was pushed through in response to the growth of internet porn in the late 90s. It criminalized showing obscene materials on the internet to minors. Great idea. But it also released liability for internet providers when it came to third-party content on their sites. Essentially, it turned websites like thedirty.com into the bathroom stall on which college town gossip was scribbled. It was like Nick Richie was completely immune to the system, until one case in particular started to look like it could take down The Dirty. Okay, so let's jump back to 2009. Nick shares 2 submissions about a woman named Sarah Jones. Oh my god, look how big my hand looks. It's the lens. Okay, sorry. Now, Sarah Jones is a cheerleader for the Cincinnati Bengals and a high school teacher as well, and these posts are absolutely horrific. They accuse her of sleeping with all of the Bengals football players. They also say that her ex-boyfriend cheated on her so much that he caught an STD that she probably has now too. And if that's not bad enough, they also allege that Sarah was doing the do in her high school classroom. Of course, very proper problematic for something like this to be attached to your name and the school at which you teach. Under the submissions, in typical snarky fashion, Nick comments something to the effect of, "Why are all teachers such freaks in the sack?" So Sarah Jones finds out, and she sends him an email asking him to take down the posts, which he ignores because he doesn't have to do shit. She threatens to lawyer up, and still, he's not budging. Meanwhile, the posts are spreading like wildfire. Sarah even ends up as a story on her local news station in Kentucky. Her students are shaming her in class. It's just all bad. She brings Nick onto Anderson Cooper's talk show via satellite. Y'all remember that show? Anyway, surprise, surprise, he does not give a single fuck.
I'm proud of her, Anderson, because she's actually changed as a person because of my site. You know, now she's talks really well. She's a leader in her community.
Wait a minute. Nick, you're saying because of your site, you're saying actually what you did to her actually helped her?
100%, Anderson. 100%.
And this wasn't even the only time that he went on Anderson Live. Dr. Phil as well, but I digress. So she ends up suing thedirty.com for libel, emotional distress, and defamation, and Nick's team moves to dismiss the case. This is where it gets interesting because the court actually sides with Sarah because Nick was adding his commentary to the bottom of all of these posts. Sarah's lawyers were arguing that these little quips removed the protections of the CDA. He was no longer letting third parties just write whatever they want, right? He was participating. When the lawsuit goes to trial, it actually ends in a mistrial because the jury can't agree on a verdict. At the second trial, Sarah Jones is awarded $338,000 in damages by a jury who, according to Nick, was filled with xenophobic women who listened to Sarah's lawyer call him a Persian Armenian terrorist. Nick appeals to the Sixth Circuit Court, and as they're awaiting that review, Sarah is indicted for sexually assaulting one of her students. Apparently, a PI had dug through her phone and found these horrifying conversations between herself and a 17-year-old student. One of the worst parts is that some of these conversations were happening on the same day as the Anderson Cooper episode, so she was sexting this student on the way to the show. They also got her mom, the high school principal, for tampering with evidence and attempting to cover it up. Fucking disaster. So Sarah ends up taking a plea deal for her case and gets 5 years probation. Meanwhile, her case with Nick is still moving forward, and it has a lot of website owners in shambles because for the first time, the CDA isn't flying as a defense. So now Nick has these leaders from Amazon, Google, Facebook, Twitter, Yelp, TripAdvisor, BuzzFeed, think of literally any website at the time, AOL. He's even got the ACLU, who infamously defended Coles Whalen's stalker's right to free speech. Sorry, I know the ACLU does a lot of really good things, but I just watched that episode of Hollywood Demons. It's fresh, and I am pissed at them for that. Anyway, all of these companies filed amicus briefs about how Nick Richie was not responsible in any way, shape, or form for the hardships that Sarah Jones experienced as a result of being posted to The Dirty. Nick has said that these companies contributed millions of dollars to his case because if Sarah Jones won, it would set a precedent that would cripple the free internet. I mean, if you think about it, there probably wouldn't be TikTok, there probably wouldn't be YouTube, people wouldn't want to take that risk. So after reading all of these submissions and looking at the evidence, the Sixth Circuit Court sides with Nick Richie and thedirty.com. Sarah Jones fades into the background until she ends up in the news again for marrying the student she assaulted. Yeah, good honest try at trying to take down thedirty.com. Probably not the best person to do it. Nick was officially invincible after beating 50 lawsuits, and The Dirty continued to beat its own records with tens of millions of people visiting that website every single day. But despite all of this success, shit was going down for Nick behind the scenes. Enter Shayne Lamas. Shayne is the daughter of big-time Hollywood actor Lorenzo Lamas. Lorenzo's best known for his role on the soap opera Falcon Crest. He was also on this crime show in the 90s called Renegade. He was a big deal, okay? Trust me. She also won Matt Grant's season of The Bachelor, even though their engagement was pretty short-lived. Her life story is actually fascinating. I linked the full interview she did on Juicy Scoop below. She talks about her childhood, being on The Bachelor. She spills so much tea. It is quite juicy, as the name would suggest. Anyway, it's 2010, she's in Vegas for her little sister's cheerleading competition, and she's sitting at the hotel bar when this random guy with a raspy-ass voice approaches her in his robe. It's fucking Nick Richie, obviously. At first, she thinks he's a total weirdo and tries to end the conversation, but one thing leads to another and they end up going out on a date. She has no clue that he runs this crazy website, and they end up going out to dinner and to a club. And next thing you know,
I'm not sure who said it, but I'm pretty sure he must have said, like, we should get married or something. And I'm like, yeah, haha. I'm like, really? I would totally do it.
Yes, girl. The day after meeting, they got married at the Little White Wedding Chapel. A little detail that I found really funny in her Juicy Scoop interview, she said that Nick originally went for the Michael Jordan package, so they were gonna get married by a Michael Jordan lookalike, and she refused until he took it seriously. However seriously you can take a wedding with someone who you met the previous day. The next morning, national news breaks about this wedding, and they're both like, wait, who are you? Shayne realizes that she married a guy who runs a morally bankrupt website, has to blow into a breathalyzer every time he gets into the driver's seat of his Ford Expedition because of that DUI we talked about earlier, and has $400 in his bank account despite all of this so-called success. But they make it work. He keeps doing club appearances, and they end up having their first child, a daughter named Press. Nick says the name is inspired by the tabloids. Shayne says it was the name of the restaurant she was in when she first felt the baby kick. Who knows? According to both of them, the marriage is very rocky. Shayne doesn't really agree with Nick's party guy kind of lifestyle. And they sort of have this Erica Jane, Tom Girardi dynamic where Nick is in charge of all of the finances and Shayne has no idea what's going on. Before you know it, Shayne's pregnant again with their second baby, but unfortunately she experiences a major complication. She collapses at home and is rushed to the hospital because the baby had implanted on her C-section scar. So as the baby was growing, it ruptured that weak spot in her uterus and she ended up bleeding out. It was a catastrophic, kind of random situation that left Shayne in a coma without her baby. Thankfully, she survived, but the public backlash was super harsh. A lot of people online felt like Nick losing his second child and almost losing his wife was karma for everything he'd done on The Dirty. The tides were definitely starting to shift. Even though the site was more popular than ever, thousands of people had essentially had their lives ruined by being accused of doing things they didn't do on The Dirty. Shayne and Nick ended up having another child after Shayne's stepmom offered to be their surrogate. Nick and Shayne even went on VH1's couples therapy for a quick buck. I mean, for therapy, of course. But their relationship was in shambles and Nick's health was suffering as well. In 2015, he was diagnosed with MS and started to feel like it might be time to wrap up The Dirty. For starters, Shayne absolutely hated the website and Nick's lifestyle as a result of it. He was constantly receiving submissions from other women asking him to rate them, asking if he'd fuck them, asking what kind of plastic surgery they should get to be more fuckable. Not to mention, he was partying the night away with college girls and club hotties while she cared for their kids. She started telling him that it was time to look for a way out and to evolve as the father that he now was. Wifey problems aside, we were also entering the late 2010s, an era where the site simply couldn't survive. It was kinda no longer acceptable to tell a woman that if she got a nose job and a belly button reduction that she would be more bangable, you know what I mean? Believe him or not, Nick claims that after becoming a father, he developed a soft spot for women and started to regret all of the harm he'd done. It was giving Logan Paul's partner getting pregnant and that being the moment that he realized that women have it tough. In 2017, Nick Richie finally sold TheDirty.com in a deal that he claims he made $0 off of because he wouldn't be able to sleep at night had he cashed out. Instead, he signed over his equity to his investors, wiped his hands clean of the whole thing, and moved on. He and Shayne divorced in 2021, and since The Dirty's demise, Nick has started several business ventures, but none of them have really taken off in the same way. He's now a restaurant owner and a publicist. And he's dating social media influencer and matchmaker Whitney Lynn, who kind of reminds me of Shayne Lamas a little bit. He definitely has a type, but good for them. Today, it's really hard to find a lot of TheDirty.com's posts, even in the Internet Archive, which probably makes the thousands of people who were posted on there very happy. But this is why oral history matters, okay? The next generation needs to know about this. They need to know because I feel like if a lot of people saw Nick Richie out and about today, they would have no idea that he was the guy behind some of the most infamous scandals of the digital age. Thank you so much for being here and watching this video. I'm seriously so grateful that y'all are here and we can talk about these things and kiki in the comments. It just makes me happy because a lot of people in my real life have no idea what TheDirty.com was. I need more chronically online people in my life. Anyway, if you like internet history, reality TV, and pop culture, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. I post new content every week, and I'm also on Instagram and TikTok if you want to follow me there. And now I gotta go take care of my baby who just got spayed. She's taking a nap right now after climbing on the kitchen table and peeing in her surgery suit. So, it's my angel. That's mommy's little angel. Yeah. Okay, bye!